regret taking me!
Every homeless veteran thinks he's some kind of hero.
Police tased a 92-year-old vet at a train station. 5 minutes later, black SUVs shut down the platform. Harold Hank Morrison had survived D-Day Korea and 92 years of life's battles. But nothing prepared him for what happened when transit police cornered him at Penn Station. When the taser hit his frail body, they thought it was over. Then the black SUVs arrived and everything changed forever. Penn Station buzzed with its usual afternoon chaos. Commuters rushed past towering departure boards while announcements echoed through the cavernous terminal. The smell of coffee and hot dogs mixed with diesel fumes as trains rumbled beneath the concrete floors. Security cameras tracked every movement, their red lights blinking like electronic eyes. Outside, Manhattan's February wind howled between skyscrapers driving sleet against the station's grimy windows. Inside, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across worn benches where travelers waited unaware they were about to witness something extraordinary. Harold Morrison sat quietly on bench 14, his weathered hands folded over a worn leather briefcase. At 92, his body showed the accumulated damage of nearly a century, of living 2 wars, 3 heart attacks, and the slow erosion of time. His marine dress blue uniform, though decades old, still fit his diminished frame with military precision. Silver hair cropped short in regulation style framed a face mapped with lines that told stories of Normandy beaches and frozen Korean mountains. Today marked a special mission. Inside his briefcase lay documents he'd carried for 70 years, classified papers from his service as a code breaker during World War II. The Pentagon had finally declassified them, and Hank was traveling to Washington to donate them to the National Archives. His granddaughter had offered to drive him, but Hank insisted on taking the train alone. "Some journeys a man has to make himself," he'd told her. His Medal of Honor pinned to his chest caught the station's harsh lighting. Most passers-by ignored the elderly man, but a few veterans nodded respectfully when they noticed the decoration. What Hank didn't know was that his briefcase had triggered a security alert. The old leather case, reinforced with metal clasps from the 1940s, appeared suspicious on X-ray scanners. His refusal to open it for inspection, protecting classified documents he'd sworn to safeguard, had escalated through multiple security levels. Transit police were now treating him as a potential threat despite his age and obvious veteran status. The situation was about to spiral beyond anyone's control, transforming a routine security check into a confrontation that would shake the foundations of how America treats its heroes. "Sir, I need you to open that briefcase immediately." Officer Martinez demanded, his hand resting on his taser. 2 other transit officers flanked him, their faces stern with bureaucratic authority. Hank looked up slowly, his blue eyes still sharp despite his age. "Son, I've been carrying these documents since before you were born. They're classified materials being transported to the National Archives under official orders." He reached into his jacket pocket, producing a letter on Pentagon letterhead. "This explains everything. I'm Harold Morrison, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired." Martinez barely glanced at the letter. "I don't care what that paper says. Open the case, or we'll open it for you." The confrontation was drawing attention. Commuters slowed their pace, phones appearing as people sensed drama unfolding. Hank felt the familiar weight of duty pressing against his chest, the same feeling he'd carried through 2 wars. These documents contained secrets that had helped win World War II, and he'd sworn an oath to protect them. Officer, I'm asking you to call your supervisor. This is a matter of national security, and I'm following proper protocols. Martinez's patience evaporated. Stand up, old man. You're coming with us. Hank remained seated, his hand steady on the briefcase. I'm not resisting, son. I'm just asking you to follow proper procedures. Call the Pentagon if you need verification. The crowd was growing larger, with several people now openly recording the confrontation. A woman in a business suit stepped forward. Officers, he's clearly a veteran. Look at his uniform, his medals. Ma'am, step back, Officer Rodriguez warned. This is official police business. But the woman persisted. That's a Medal of Honor. Do you know what that means? Hank appreciated the support, but knew it was making things worse. Young officers pumped with adrenaline and authority rarely backed down when challenged publicly. He'd seen it before, pride and procedure creating dangerous combinations. It's all right, miss, Hank said softly. These officers are just doing their job. His calm demeanor seemed to frustrate Martinez even more. The officer's radio crackled with dispatcher chatter, adding pressure to resolve the situation quickly. Last warning, Martinez announced, unholstering his taser. Stand up and surrender the briefcase. The crowd gasped. Several people shouted protests, but the officers ignored them. Hank looked at the weapon pointed at him, a device that could stop a man's heart, especially one as old and fragile as his. Son, I survived Omaha Beach and the Chosen Reservoir. I'm not afraid of you or your toy, Hank said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd faced real danger. But I am disappointed. This isn't how we treat our own. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Martinez hesitated, seeing something in the old man's eyes that reminded him of his own grandfather, also a veteran. But procedure demanded action, and his supervisors were watching. I'm sorry, sir, but you're under arrest for failure to comply with security screening. As Martinez moved forward, Hank made his choice. He stood slowly, his arthritis making the movement painful, but kept his grip on the briefcase. I'll come with you, but these documents stay with me until proper authority takes custody. It was a reasonable request that should have ended the confrontation. Instead, it escalated everything. Drop the case now, Martinez shouted, his finger moving to the taser's trigger. Hank remained standing, briefcase in hand, surrounded by 3 officers in the middle of Penn Station. The crowd had grown to over 50 people, many recording with their phones. The elderly veteran's calm dignity contrasted sharply with the officer's aggressive posture. I understand you have a job to do, Hank said, his voice carrying across the terminal. But I have a duty too. These documents helped save American lives in World War II. I won't dishonor that sacrifice by abandoning my responsibility now. A young man in the crowd called out, He's 92 years old. What's wrong with you? The public pressure was mounting, but Martinez felt trapped by his own escalation. Backing down now would look weak, especially with so many witnesses. His radio crackled again, supervisors demanding updates, adding to his stress. Sir, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be, Officer Rodriguez whispered, trying to de-escalate, but Martinez was beyond reason. He's interfering with security operations. That's a federal offense. The irony was lost on him, threatening a man who'd spent his life defending federal security. Unknown to the officers, the confrontation was already going viral. Respect Our Vets began trending as videos spread across social media platforms. News outlets picked up the story with CNN and Fox News both sending crews to Penn Station. More importantly, the videos had reached someone with real power. In a secure office in Washington, D.C., General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, watched the live stream with growing fury. She recognized Hank immediately. He'd been her mentor when she was a young intelligence officer, teaching her the importance of protecting classified information. "Get me the Pentagon's liaison at Penn Station," she barked to her aide, "and patch me through to whoever's in charge of transit police." Meanwhile, at Penn Station, more veterans in the crowd began identifying themselves. A Vietnam vet stepped forward, followed by an Iraq War veteran still in his Army uniform. They formed a protective semicircle around Hank, their presence adding moral weight to the confrontation. "You want to arrest him, you'll have to arrest all of us," the Vietnam vet declared. The situation was spiraling beyond a simple security check into something much larger and more dangerous. Martinez's radio suddenly erupted with urgent chatter. His supervisor's voice cut through the static. "Martinez, stand down immediately. We have federal authorities en route." "Sir, the suspect is still non-compliant with security screening," Martinez responded, unwilling to abandon his position. "Did you hear me? Stand down. That's a direct order." But Martinez was too invested in the confrontation to back down gracefully. The crowd, the cameras, the pressure, it all combined to push him toward a decision that would haunt him forever. "I'm taking him into custody," Martinez announced, stepping toward Hank with zip-tie restraints. Hank didn't resist, but he also didn't release the briefcase. As Martinez reached for his arm, the elderly veteran's grip tightened on the handle. The officer interpreted this as resistance and made a split-second decision that would change everything. "Taser, taser, taser," Martinez shouted, following protocol as he pulled the trigger. The electrical current hit Hank's frail body like lightning. The 92-year-old veteran collapsed instantly, his briefcase flying open as classified documents scattered across Penn Station's dirty floor. The crowd's reaction was immediate and explosive. Screams of outrage filled the terminal as people rushed forward to help the fallen veteran. The Vietnam vet knelt beside Hank, checking for a pulse while shouting for medical assistance. "You killed him," someone screamed. "You tasered a 92-year-old war hero." Martinez stood frozen, the taser still in his hand, as the reality of his actions hit him. Rodriguez immediately called for paramedics while trying to control the increasingly hostile crowd. But the real drama was just beginning. As EMTs worked on Hank's unconscious form, black SUVs began arriving outside Penn Station. Federal agents in dark suits emerged, their faces grim with purpose. They moved through the terminal with military precision, taking control of the scene. The scattered documents were quickly secured by agents wearing gloves, each paper treated like the classified material it was. The crowd was pushed back as a perimeter was established around the unconscious veteran. General Hayes had made her calls, and the full weight of the federal government was now descending on Penn Station. What had started as a security screening was about to become a national incident. As paramedics worked frantically on Hank's motionless body, the federal agents took complete control of Penn Station. Agent Sarah Chen, a 20-year veteran of the Secret Service, approached the transit officers with barely contained fury. "Which one of you idiots tasered a Medal of Honor recipient carrying classified Pentagon documents?" she demanded. Martinez, still holding the taser, stepped forward. "Ma'am," He was non-compliant with security screening. I followed proper protocol. Chen's laugh was cold and humorless. Proper protocol? You just attacked one of the most decorated veterans in American history while he was on an official mission for the Pentagon. Do you have any idea what you've done? The crowd pressed closer despite agents trying to maintain a perimeter. Videos continued streaming live across social media, with millions now watching the aftermath of the tasing. News helicopters circled overhead while reporters gathered outside the station. On the ground, Hank remained unconscious. His pulse was weak and irregular. The taser's electrical shock had triggered a cardiac event in his 92-year-old heart. The EMT team worked desperately to stabilize him as an ambulance waited outside. "Is he going to make it?" Rodriguez asked quietly. The lead paramedic's expression was grim. At his age, with his medical history, this could go either way. The weight of potential consequences settled over everyone involved. If Hank died, this would become more than a civil rights violation. It would be the killing of an American hero. Agent Chen's phone buzzed with an encrypted call. She answered immediately. "Chen here." "Agent Chen, this is General Hayes. What's the status on Gunnery Sergeant Morrison?" "Critical, ma'am. He's unconscious and in cardiac distress. The EMTs are working on him now." "And the documents?" "Secured. We've recovered all visible materials, but some may have been photographed by bystanders before we arrived." The general's voice turned ice cold. "Agent Chen, you need to understand something. Harold Morrison isn't just any veteran. He was part of the team that broke the Japanese naval codes. The documents he was carrying contain information that's still classified at the highest levels. If he dies because some trigger-happy transit cop couldn't follow basic protocols..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Chen understood the implications perfectly. Meanwhile, the crowd's anger was reaching a boiling point. The Vietnam veteran who'd first defended Hank stood up, his face red with rage. This man stormed the beaches at Normandy. He fought in Korea, and you people treat him like a terrorist. Other veterans in the crowd began sharing Hank's story, piecing together his remarkable service record. Word spread that he'd earned his Medal of Honor for single-handedly holding a position against overwhelming enemy forces, saving dozens of American lives. "He's a hero," someone shouted, "and you nearly killed him." Martinez tried to defend his actions. "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't listen," the crowd roared back. The paramedics were preparing to transport Hank when his eyes suddenly fluttered open. Weak and disoriented, he tried to speak. "The documents, are they?" Agent Chen knelt beside the stretcher. "They're secure, Sergeant Morrison. You completed your mission." As Hank was loaded into the ambulance, Agent Chen turned to Martinez with the full authority of the federal government behind her. "Officer Martinez, you're under arrest for assault on a federal agent conducting official business violation of the Espionage Act, for compromising classified materials and civil rights violations under federal law." Martinez's face went white. "Federal agent, he's just an old man with a briefcase." "That old man holds a security clearance higher than most generals. He was transporting those documents under direct Pentagon orders. You didn't just taser a veteran, you attacked a federal operative on a classified mission." The crowd erupted in cheers as Martinez was handcuffed. Rodriguez and the third officer were also detained pending investigation. The entire transit police response was being reviewed at the highest levels. But the real turning point came when General Hayes herself arrived at the hospital where Hank was being treated. Her presence sent shock waves through the medical staff and confirmed what many had suspected: this wasn't just any veteran. The story was no longer about police overreach. It had become a symbol of how America treats its heroes and the consequences of forgetting the sacrifices made for freedom. At Walter Reed Medical Center, where Hank had been transferred, General Hayes sat beside his hospital bed. The 92-year-old veteran was stable but weak, his body still recovering from the electrical shock and subsequent cardiac episode. "Hank, I'm sorry this happened to you," the general said softly. "You deserved better from your country." Hank's voice was barely a whisper. "Did the documents make it safely?" "Every single page. The archives received them this morning, along with a full briefing on their historical significance. Your mission was successful." Outside the hospital, media trucks lined the streets. The story had exploded into national headlines, with politicians from both parties condemning the treatment of the veteran. Protest vigils were being held at train stations across the country, with veterans demanding justice and accountability. The Pentagon announced a full investigation, while the Department of Justice opened a civil rights case. Martinez faced federal charges that could result in decades in prison. The Transit Authority's entire security protocol was under review, with calls for comprehensive reform. But for Hank, the most important preparation was yet to come: his testimony before Congress about what had happened and why it mattered. Despite the overwhelming support, Hank struggled with whether to pursue the matter further. The stress of testifying, the media attention, the legal proceedings at 92, he wondered if he had the strength for such a battle. "Maybe I should just let it go," he confided to General Hayes during one of her visits. "I'm old, and this fight could take years." But Hayes had a different perspective. "Hank, you didn't survive 2 wars just to give up now. This isn't about you anymore. It's about every veteran who comes after you. Your courage in pursuing this will protect others." His granddaughter agreed. "Grandpa, you've never backed down from a fight when it mattered." "This matters." Hank looked at the Medal of Honor on his bedside table, remembering the day he'd earned it and the oath he'd taken to defend his country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The Congressional hearing room was packed beyond capacity. C-SPAN carried the proceedings live as Hank, still recovering, but determined, prepared to testify before the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. His appearance, frail but dignified, in his dress blue uniform, created a powerful visual that resonated across the nation. Committee Chairman Robert Sullivan opened with a statement. "Today, we examine not just an isolated incident, but a systemic failure to protect and honor those who have served our nation with distinction." Martinez's attorney had tried to prevent the hearing, arguing it would prejudice potential jurors in the criminal case. But public pressure and congressional authority prevailed. The American people deserved to hear directly from the veteran who'd been attacked while serving his country. The defense strategy became clear immediately. Martinez's lawyer argued that his client had followed proper security protocols and couldn't have known about Hank's classified mission or veteran status. "My client saw an elderly man with a suspicious briefcase who refused to comply with lawful security screening," the attorney argued. "In today's security environment, such behavior must be taken seriously regardless of the individual's age or appearance." The argument seemed reasonable until video evidence was presented. The footage clearly showed Hank's uniform, his medals, and his repeated attempts to explain his mission. It also captured his calm, non-threatening demeanor throughout the confrontation. The defendant had multiple opportunities to de-escalate, prosecutor Janet Williams pointed out. Instead, he chose to use potentially lethal force against a 92-year-old man who posed no physical threat to anyone. The breakthrough moment came when Hank himself testified. Sitting at the witness table with his Medal of Honor visible, he spoke in a clear, strong voice that belied his recent ordeal. "I've served this country for over 70 years," he began. "I've carried secrets that helped win World War II, and I've never once betrayed the trust placed in me. On that day at Penn Station, I was completing what I believed would be my final mission, delivering those documents to their proper home in the National Archives." His voice grew stronger as he continued, "I didn't resist arrest. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply tried to fulfill my duty while following proper protocols for handling classified materials. For that, I was treated like an enemy of the state I've spent my life defending." The room was silent as Hank described the moment the taser hit him. "I thought about the young Marines I'd served with who never made it home. I wondered if this was how my story would end, not on a battlefield defending freedom, but on the floor of a train station attacked by those sworn to protect and serve." Several committee members were visibly moved, with some wiping away tears. The committee's final report was unanimous and scathing. It called for immediate reforms in security training, mandatory de-escalation protocols, and special protections for veterans and elderly citizens. Martinez was convicted on all federal charges and sentenced to 5 years in prison. But the real victory came in the broader changes that followed. The Harold Morrison Act was passed by Congress, requiring federal facilities to implement veteran-friendly security procedures and providing legal protections for those carrying classified materials under official orders. Hank lived to see these changes implemented, passing away peacefully 2 years later, at age 94. His funeral was attended by thousands, including the General Hayes and veterans from across the nation. The documents he'd protected were displayed at the National Archives, with a special exhibit honoring his service and sacrifice. The briefcase that had started it all was donated to the Smithsonian, where it serves as a reminder of the price of freedom and the importance of treating our heroes with the respect they've earned. The immediate aftermath brought sweeping changes to federal security protocols nationwide. The Harold Morrison Act required all federal facilities to implement specialized training for interactions with veterans, elderly citizens, and individuals carrying classified materials under official orders. Martinez's conviction sent shockwaves through law enforcement communities, establishing clear legal precedent that excessive force against vulnerable populations would face serious federal consequences. The Transit Authority paid Hank a $15 million settlement and implemented comprehensive reforms to their security procedures. General Hayes used the case to advocate for broader veteran protection legislation, testifying before Congress about the need for systemic changes in how America treats its military heroes. The Pentagon established new protocols for transporting classified materials, ensuring proper coordination with local security forces. Most importantly, the incident sparked a national conversation about respect for veterans and the elderly, leading to cultural shifts in how these populations are treated in public spaces. 5 years later, The Harold Morrison case is studied in police academies and law schools as a landmark example of how not to handle security situations involving vulnerable populations. The legal precedent it established has been cited in over 200 subsequent cases protecting veterans and elderly citizens from similar abuse. The Harold Morrison Veterans Protection Center, funded by his settlement, now operates in 12 cities, providing legal advocacy and support for veterans facing discrimination or abuse. The center has successfully defended over 1,000 veterans in various legal proceedings. Penn Station itself underwent major renovations, including a memorial garden honoring veterans and a permanent exhibit about Hank's service and sacrifice. The station now serves as a model for veteran-friendly public facilities nationwide. The classified documents Hank protected are displayed at the National Archives, where they continue to educate visitors about the crucial role of intelligence work in winning World War II. On his 94th birthday, Hank returned to Penn Station one final time. Walking slowly through the terminal where he'd been attacked, he paused at the memorial plaque bearing his name and the names of other veterans who'd faced discrimination. A young transit officer approached respectfully. "Sir, thank you for your service, and thank you for making this place better for all of us." Hank smiled, remembering the fear and anger of that terrible day. "Son, sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with courage and dignity. Never forget that." He walked away, knowing his final mission was truly complete. He'd made America a little more worthy of the sacrifices made in its name.